I want a reason for players to farm and play long term to get stronger. And that doesn't exist in 14 right now. Oh man, I will not talk about Pirate Software. I will not talk about Pirate. What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about all the drama with Pirate. God damn it. No, we're talking about Final Fantasy 14. Final Fantasy 14 is doing so bad that Square Enix just wants you to go play 11. That's not really true, but it is a catchier hook than what I was planning. I mean, Square Enix was just giving 14 players a massive discount on their subscription and purchasing the game for Final Fantasy 11. So it's not totally clickbait. It's been a weird time in Final Fantasy 14. Everyone was waiting for the new patch 7.25 to save 14, to give us something to do. A meaningful grind. Well, we kind of got that with our first relic weapon. You did have to do a bit of a grind for that. It was a lengthier chore. It was something to do. There was some kind of a grind there. It wasn't just going to get tomestones. But once you got the first weapon, every other weapon is just buy it with tombstone. So it's just back to the Endwalker relic grinding. Then we have the new 48 player raid content, the Forked Tower. That's inside the Occult Crescent, and it kind of demands you to schedule your run through Discord or be a famous streamer just to get 48 people into the instance, because the system is kind of impossible for a random group. I know that they did just make some changes to it, which is great, but it wasn't a great look for the start of it. Also, player numbers have just been on the decline, and the company knows. Square Enix President Takashi Kiryu talked about the decline in player counts and responded that they are aware to questions about the decline in quality since then. We grew bigger and processes didn't fully work out the way we intended them to. We want to improve this again, especially with the new and big content that we have recently released. This was difficult. We want to keep providing fun and engaging content, and we will strive to do better. So listen, Final Fantasy 14 is a great game, until it has to be an MMORPG. New players are regularly invested in the story and the dearth of content, right up until they catch up and have to wait around for the rest of us. It's my opinion that Final Fantasy 14 is its weakest when it has to be an MMO, and it's its strongest when it's a single player Final Fantasy entry that you occasionally have to play with some other players to do a raid. Yoshi-P himself has said time and again that it's okay to play other games between major content patches, and this comes through in the way that the content is delivered. The content patches can be mostly completed in a day or two, and then there are long months of just waiting for the next drip feed of content. But that has been relegated to just tombstone hunts in Endwalker and now Dawntrail. And the lack of open world content in Endwalker was strongly felt by the community, and that's kind of where the drop-off started, when we just didn't have anything to do besides garden. Final Fantasy 14 is a theme park MMO, and in that same spirit, there's never really a reason to revisit a zone unless you're going on a hunt train or something else. You have to spend conscious effort to find a reason to go out and revisit a zone that isn't involved in some major quest. And this can make the game feel really empty between main story quests. Again, it's a great game until it has to be an MMORPG. If you compare this over to Final Fantasy XI, the greatest and best MMO ever to exist. And I might be a little bit biased on that, a little bit. And just in the interest of truth here, I actually really enjoyed 1.0 at the end. Not the beginning. Not the beginning. Don't come for me. But at the end, when Yoshi-P took over and he added in the relic grind and he added in dungeons and he added in quests because there weren't any quests in the game. When Yoshi-P took over 1.0, that direction of the game was the closest it ever felt in a marriage between Final Fantasy 14 and Final Fantasy 11. Felt like 11-ish, but a little bit more casual and better graphics. But opinions on 11 and 1.0 aside, there are meaningful takeaways from these games that would go a long way to reviving the gameplay loop in 14 without making it into the impossibly difficult chore of a game that 11 is known for. The main differences between 11 and 14, just at a base level, is the gear progression. We can put aside the leveling in 11, that's just a soulless grind. I'm into it, I like it, hit me mommy, but it's off-putting for new players, and I get that. For gear in 14, you just have to grab the newest rotating tombstone gear. Maybe if you're a raider, you buy some crafted gear off the market board for some pentamelding and you push savages. But it's still generally about chasing eye level and just capping it weekly until you hit the cap and then you're done. There's little excitement in getting a fresh item drop or new gear unless it's glamour, because you're just, again, pushing item level. Now I know, if you're hardcore in this game, you might have a choice between two different gear pieces. Amazing, stellar, incredible. Two different gear pieces with one change in the stat line. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. That's not choice. That's not what I'm talking about when I think of gear expression and building my own gear sets. Just picking between one option or the other option, and then the next patch that gets replaced. That's not meaningful gear progression to me. It's also counter to what Yoshi-P himself has said, where he thinks that you should be able to go and play another game. Well, if I go and play another game and I don't keep up with the eye level grind, I come back and I'm back to zero. The world has left me behind. My gear is garbage. My eye level sucks. If I leave for 6 months to a year and I come back to Final Fantasy XI, That gear, still good. I'm still good. The grinds that I did are not thrown away. In 11, my effort is still rewarded from things I've done before. Whereas 14, you're only rewarded with the last content patch that you actually participated in. To me, that's not meaningful gearing. You might as well just remove eye level and just let us do all the content at that point, because it's just too stale. There's no choice. There's no brain that has to go into it. I just press button, upgrade me, put more level on my level. Like that's uninteresting to me. In 11, you're never done. Like, honestly, you're never done. There's always someone on the server that you can be jealous of, and it pushes players to never stop improving their gear. And somehow, much of that gear are forever pieces. Even at lower levels, you can get an item that will stay on you for most of your time, and it makes getting a drop very exciting because you can check that slot off your list and you know it'll be best forever or for most. For example, with a lot of effort doing main storylines and farming, I can get a level 40 belt called the Swift Belt, which gives me 4% haste. That will stay on me from level 40 to 75 to endgame and beyond. I will never be replacing that. You generally won't replace that belt in Final Fantasy XI until, say, super endgame, and you're looking at like what little things you can upgrade. So you might want to get the 6% haste belt, but that is an extremely rare drop. It's a 72-hour notorious monster that everyone camps in. It's a very low rate. But if you did get that, there you go. That's your forever belt. You're never going to replace that. So listen, I watch a lot of MMO anime like Sword Art Online or Shangri-La Frontier. And if you ever watch those, you'll know that the main character will usually find some crazy epic unattainable items or some rarely killed monster or something that's never been slain before. That's Final Fantasy 11. That's not 14. That's 11. Like so specifically, especially Shangri-La Frontier, where there's monsters that are impossible to kill, and there's just like word of mouth among the player base, like, oh, I may have seen him once. Like that's 11. That's 11 in real life. Like in 11, everyone remembers that time they party with someone who had a relic weapon or has like an item from Absolute Virtue or Pandemonium Warden. Those are two incredibly difficult to kill endgame bosses that, if you can say you've killed it, you're part of the 1%. Chasing these levels of power were goals for some, but others like me would just accept like, hey, I'm more casual. I'm never going to get a relic. That's just what they're going to do. And that looks really cool. And I'm happy for you. I'm just going to try to improve my own power without spending years on one item. This is where I do an aside for people who don't know 11. But in 11, a relic weapon would take you years of grinding in retail, doing weekly runs of an endgame raid, plus making the money to fund the item and upgrade your relic. It would take hundreds of millions of gil, which would be a lot in 11, not in 14. The dedication it takes to get a relic weapon was actually impressive. If you had one, you needed to touch grass and probably check for deep vein thrombosis, but you were also a legend in Final Fantasy XI. This is another aside and a PSA. Deep vein thrombosis is serious. This is why they tell you to get up every hour and stretch, because you don't want to get deep vein thrombosis for sitting for 8 hours in a row without moving. But honestly, I think that an MMO needs players like that. I think that if you don't have someone that you can look at and say, wow, what is that? I have never seen that in my life. It gives the world that something that feels like an MMO. If I don't care, everyone's going to be the same, then we're not playing an MMO. We're just playing Mario Party. And that's great. That's fine. But you need a difference in scale. You need people who are so dedicated to the game that they're always on it. That one, that there's going to be that community of people. The game is active. You can see them there because they won't stop. They won't turn off the game. That's the one game they play, and they want everything for it. And then anytime you come back, well, wow, what have you guys done here? This is crazy. I feel like Final Fantasy XIV too worried about leaving players behind. They're too worried about having a player feel bad about themselves because they don't have the great gear that person has. So they try to make the differences very minor and small, and everything that you would strive for is just glamour. Like, oh, that looks cool, but we're all together. Even through the fact that they will level sync your gear when you're doing certain content. So if you go into a content and your gear is way over leveled, you've got great gear, still gonna get like squashed down to some baseline level so that you can only be so much better than your peers, which kind of feels bad. The reason that I went through all the effort to get this loot, what am I doing this for if not to show off to other players who don't have it? I mean, come on, let's be honest with ourselves. That's what we're here for. I want to show off. I want someone to come up to me and say, holy you got that? But I did used to do endgame in 11. I did have the first and only high quality Orchicchillum Lance Triton Spear on my last private server. So, I'm a kind of a big deal. Leaving those crazy levels of gear aside, there was just always a way to upgrade your job, your gear, your playstyle, merits. You could always find something to do in 11 if you wanted to that would upgrade you or help you in a meaningful way and make some progress towards something. In 14, we have to grind mounts and glamour items and look for gear that looks nice. That's it. Like, that's fashion show. And I love that. I love that. Don't get me wrong. I care about fashion, but a lot of people don't. And if you don't care about fashion, what are you grinding for in 14? So how can any of this work in Final Fantasy 14? It's pretty obvious that the tombstone gearing system is ingrained at the core, and there's probably no changing that. But it would be nice to put some of the thought back into your gearing. Give us some options in the tombstone gear department. A little bit more than A, B, a little bit more than, hey, you can either go to, you can do Savage or you can do Tombstone. That's the only two options right now for gearing, and it gets boring, especially if you're not a Savage Raider, because then you just do Tombstone and you're done. Outside of materia melding, which still barely gives a choice because a lot of the stats are capped on the gear by default, so you pretty much usually only have one, maybe two options of materia to put in that gear. I would love to find some unique gear that altered playstyles. For example, in 11, we had weapons that would multi-hit, you know, 2 to 3 times, 2 to 4 times, 1 to 2 times. So those weapons, while they would be lower in damage, that would alter your playstyle. Now, again, it doesn't really work here in 14 because we don't have TP, but it would be great for a 14 to have its own style of something that alters your gameplay. When you get it, you now play in a different way. Also in 11, they had the Magian weapons. You picked a weapon type and you went along these branching paths to do different quests where you killed things with the weapon to make it grow in different directions. So you could grow and have it have different stats on it, or different delay, different damage. It would vary the look of the weapon as you went. It was a very long and sometimes really painful grind. So again, I'm not saying to bring that part of it, but just having this way that you can have player expression in your weapon and have it expressed in a powerful way instead of a glamour way is, I think, one of the what I'm trying to say is that's the main thing we're missing is power expression instead of just glamour. And another system, then 14 could straight up steal this system from 11, was the burning circle system. So in 11, we had notorious monsters, which 14 in 1.0 had notorious monsters, and I don't know why they got rid of them. They turned them into fates, and then the fates don't have any reason to hunt them. But we had notorious monsters, which were just timed spawns, or they were forced pops. They had spawn conditions that would make them pop up, and then you would farm them, you would try to kill them, and then they would drop something, maybe if you were lucky. So 11 has that, and then they also have this burning circle system. You use a currency called Beastmen Seals to engage in these, closed off fights for 3 to 6 players. Depending on how many seals you traded, that was the level cap and the type of fight you were in. So 20, you were capped to 20. If you give them 60 seals, you're capped to 60. The way you get these seals is by killing monsters in the open world that give you XP, that are like close to your level. These are time gated, so you can only get 1 seal every 5 minutes. So you couldn't just power farm the seals and make the content obsolete. There was a reason to go out there into the open world, and then you would use those to either make money or to find some unique and rare gear inside a burning circle. And it goes a long way towards content that is endlessly repeatable and gives a reason to be out in the open world. Add in the fact that some of the gear that you can get from burning circles were the best in slot forever. These things, you would get them. They were very rare to get. And when you got them, that was it. You're great. For instance, the Kraken Club attacks 2 to 8 times, and it was instrumental in killing Absolute Virtue the first, forever. So it became one of those items that if you had a Kraken Club, you were a named person in 11. There was single-digit players who had it. Now, 14 doesn't need to copy any of this, and likely won't. I mean, what are the Yoshi-P's checking out? Little old Gray Breeze in here. But it does need to add long-term goals and achievements that are all worthy and long-lasting. Ultimate raids and the glamour weapons you get from them are a great start, but like mounts, they only matter to people who care about glamour and looks. If you care about power, there's nothing for you. And that's my main problem. The people who play long-term are generally glamour farmers, but they have to push power to get the glamour, the rare glamour. I want a reason for players to farm and play long-term to get stronger, and that doesn't exist in 14 right now. Final Fantasy XIV has very few, if any, long-term chases for players who want power, outside of Savage raiding, but that power is quickly replaced. There's hardly any reason to play between patches except to hunt fashion. And players are feeling that even more in Dawntrail, where the story is struggling to have any weight after such a heady conclusion in Endwalker. That's all for me. Tell me how you disagree in the comments, and like and subscribe. Bye!